When you pass by the front of 9303 Saybrook Avenue in Silver Spring, you will see a home that looks relatively tidy. But go around back and it's a totally different story. This home has been abandoned for close to 15 years.
It really is like a ghost owns the house next door.
And neighbors Lana and Neil Ray say it's been a blemish to the neighborhood.
And the problem is that when you live next to a neighbor who's in the house and a problem arises, you can go and talk about it. But in this case, we didn't really know when she left the house and we didn't know where she went.
An air conditioner unit had fallen out of a window, was dangling by the cord. We didn't know whether it was electrified or not. The window, of course, was open this far and stayed that way for a year or so.
But now, thanks to a new bill from Councilmember Tom Hucker, owners of these vacant, dilapidated properties will be subject to hundreds of dollars in fines if they fail to keep them up.
I mean, I certainly didn't know the extent of the problem. Some of them are very obvious in the neighborhood, but when you talk to our housing department, one of the things that surprised me was they don't even have a list of them. They don't have their arms around the problem, and that's really the first goal of the legislation we passed, is to sort of scope out the problem and create a way for the housing department to know how many there are.
Currently, owners of vacant properties can be fined up to $500 for code violations that are not addressed within 90 days. However, many times those cases end up in court where they are frequently dismissed. Hucker's bill creates an escalating scale of fees that cannot be contested.
In some cases, boarded up windows and doors. In some cases, gutters hanging off houses and things like that. And for several of them, big holes in the side of the house, big enough for rats and raccoons and other vermin to run in and out of the house.
Sold for more than $5 million in 2003, these two properties on Silver Spring Avenue have sat vacant for years. Back in 2010, the developer received planning board approval to redevelop the houses into a hotel, but so far those plans have not been realized. Not only are the houses an eyesore, but they have been known to frequent squatters, underage drinking parties, and other destructive activities.
Oh, it's a real safety risk. I mean, our first responders are concerned about this because blighted properties like that are vacant are twice as likely to catch on fire because they have wiring issues and other things like that. They're also targets for arson, just for either, kids that are playing in them or causing trouble. So it's the last thing you want in a community, and it's so frustrating in a place as nice as Montgomery County to talk to neighbors who have been next to one of these blighted properties for sometimes 15 or 20 years. It's crazy.
And in the Ray Silver Spring neighborhood, there are several more vacant properties in addition to the house next door.
The house directly across the street from us is one that we rented happily for about 11 years before we bought this one. It has been empty for about 2.5 years. It hasn't been updated probably since it was built in the middle of the last century, but it is a functional house, and he pays a lawn crew again to mow the lawn.
But it's amazing how many homes in the last decade have just frittered away like this. You don't sometimes even know when they've left. It's hard to identify. You just start seeing the gutters hanging off and realize, oh no, there's another one.
The Rays are hopeful this new bill will put a stop to these types of violations before they become a problem. The legislation will create a master list of vacant or blighted properties that will be registered and monitored by the county's housing department. Since Councilmember Hucker put the word out, he's had hundreds of residents report such properties in their neighborhood.
So it really is a problem that affects every neighborhood, and it is not good for, even if you don't live right next to one of these properties, you're paying for more police coverage for these properties because they attract crime, more fire coverage, and they're bringing down everyone else's property values, which means less tax revenue for the county and more pressure on us to raise other people's taxes to maintain the services that everybody counts on. So it's really a countywide problem, and I'm glad we have the beginnings of a countywide solution.
The county executive is expected to sign the bill into law this summer. In the meantime, housing officials will come up with a scale of fees to bring before the council for a vote later this year. In Silver Spring, I'm Susan Kenedy for County Report This Week.